All right, today we're diving into something a lot of us in our 20s and 30s know maybe a little too well, the quarter-life crisis.
You ever get that little voice in your head, the one that whispers you're supposed to have it all figured out by now? You know, the perfect career, the relationship, the 5-year plan. But instead of feeling on track, you just feel kind of lost.
Well, if that question hits home, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are so not alone. That feeling of being adrift is way more common than you think.
Okay, so let's get into it. What exactly is a quarter-life crisis? Where did the term even come from, and how is it any different from, say, a midlife crisis?
So at its core, it's that really intense period of anxiety and confusion about where your life is headed. It usually hits sometime between your late teens and early 30s, a lot of times right after a huge life change, like finishing school or starting that first real job.
And you know, while the feeling might seem like it's been around forever, the term itself really took off back in 2001. Two authors, Alexander Robbins and Abby Wilner, they pretty much wrote the book on it and finally gave a name to this thing that so many young adults were going through. And here's a really key difference to keep in mind. This is not a midlife crisis. A quarter-life crisis is all about the stress of trying to build a life from the ground up. A midlife crisis, on the other hand, is more about looking back at the life you've already built and asking, wait, is this really it?
So what kicks this whole thing off? And what does it actually feel like when you're in it? Let's break down some of the most common triggers and symptoms so you can kind of see if they ring a bell.
The triggers, well, they can feel like they're coming from everywhere. There's that huge societal pressure to be successful and like yesterday. There's being unsure about your career or feeling stuck in a job you don't love. Big life changes, for sure, a move, a breakup. And then there's social media, that never-ending feed of everyone else's perfect-looking lives. It's a huge one.
And the symptoms that come with it can be really tough. We're talking about a deep confusion about who you even are and what your purpose is. That constant humming anxiety about what's next. A feeling of being totally alone, even in a crowd. And of course, replaying and doubting every major choice you've ever made.
And this right here, this quote just cuts right to the heart of it. You did everything you were supposed to do. You followed the plan, you checked all the boxes. So why do you still feel so lost? It's a question that can really shake you.
Okay, so we know what it is, we know what it feels like, but here's the most important part. You don't have to just sit and suffer through it. You're not stuck. Let's talk about some real ways to start navigating your way through the fog.
Think of it like a simple 4-step game plan. First, just take some time to reflect. Seriously, journal, meditate, go for a walk, whatever helps you reconnect with what you actually want. Second, build up that support system. Talk to friends, family, people you trust. Third, forget the giant leaps and set some small, realistic goals. Little wins build big confidence. And fourth, and this one is huge, limit that social media time. Give yourself a break from the comparison game.
But what if this all feels bigger than that? What if it's not just a slump you can just snap out of? What happens when the feelings are just completely overwhelming? And this is so important. Know when it's time to ask for help. If the anxiety or despair feels like too much to handle on your own, talking to a professional is a sign of strength. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT can be a game changer. It basically helps you learn how to identify and reframe those negative thought patterns that are holding you back.
All right, for this last part, I want to completely flip the script on how we think about this. What if this crisis isn't a sign that you've done something wrong? What if it's actually a sign that you're on the right track, that this is a normal step forward? So, there's this famous psychologist, Erik Erikson, and he had a theory about a key stage we all go through in our 20s. He called it intimacy versus isolation. It's all about figuring out who we are, what we value, and how to form deep, meaningful connections. And you know what? A quarter-life crisis fits right into that. It's actually a sign that you're grappling with these big, important questions, just like you're supposed to. So let's look at it this way. The struggle, the confusion, the anxiety, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It is a powerful, undeniable sign that you are actively trying to build a real, meaningful adult life for yourself. And that is hard work. And that leaves us with one final, big question to think about. What if this thing we call a crisis isn't something to be afraid of at all? What if it's actually an opportunity? An opportunity to hit pause, to really listen to yourself, and to start building a life that is truly, authentically your own.